Hello, everybody. Today, we're going to talk about the generative AI part 2, where we will see how to use generative AI using ChatGPT, how to create a user interface that can be used to render the chat, and how to generate code given a specific scenario. So basically, the objective is using ChatGPT, we will generate code. You would have seen in many articles in the net that Gen AI or ChatGPT or any such tools will result in coding being automated that would result in much of workforce reduction. To help the workforce to speed up programming. Well, let's get into the task. So using ChatGPT Gen AI, which is nothing but a popular generative AI application, we can do a lot of things. Now, in this particular edition of this edition, I'm going to talk about the how part of it, is to how to create the interface for the ChatGPT. Now, one thing that we need to do is we should create an API key in ChatGPT application that should be used when we run the code. Now, let me show you what I have done in creating the API key. So we have to get into the OpenAI application where API keys can be generated, and then we have this particular option of create new secret key, using which we can generate the API key. So I've already generated the API key, which I'll be using in my code. Now, once we have the API key, then we can start using that and start coding. Now, in this particular piece of code, I've used the API key here. Well, the API key costs, so I've masked it in the sense I've used another program where I've kept the API key and referenced it in this particular program. So only the name of the variable you see here, but not the actual value. So it is all that plain, like you can always get the API key and put it in place of this and then start using this. Well, now the chatbot that is going to be created by this particular program will use a couple of roles. So one is the system role, the other one is the user role. What are these roles? I will be using the system and user roles. There are three roles generally that is being used in the applications, the Gen AI application. One is system, the other one is user, the other one is assistant. System is something where you give instruction to the internals of the system. A message specified by the developer to steer the model response. So it is a developer given message. That means it's for the internals of this ChatGPT application. User role is used when you get the content from the user and then give it to the ChatGPT. Now, the assistant role represents who is responding to the end user prompt. So more like, if you chat in any of the chatbots, you are the user and the responder is the assistant. So the assistant role represents who is responding to the end user prompt. So that is basically what it is. Let's go back to the code and see what is there. So this, as I said, this particular code will help us generate code using ChatGPT API. So here we see we give the internal instruction, the developer gives the internal instructions to the application where it says role system content is convert the description into Python code. So internally this telling, it's also a prompt, it is not coding, it is actually a prompt or just a conversational message. But it is told to the internal, so we say it's system role based instruction kind of thing. So convert the description into Python code. Now then we use what is known as the grad.io library. This grad.io library helps us to generate or create the user interface for us. Now let's this is the code that is written in entirety, and let's see how it works for us. Now I see. Execute the command. It takes some time to get executed.
A few moments later.
Yeah, so here you see that it has started the application in 7860 in the localhost. So let's open localhost 7860. So here you see the chatbot having opened the application. Chatbot application is open in the browser. Now here I'm going to give the specification, a spec, or some kind of a input prompt to the chat engine where it'll convert into code. I've already written some instruction here. This is what I'm going to give. Let me copy paste this. What I'm saying is, I'm just saying when user enters username and password, then authenticate the user. So I basically want to generate code where user will be authenticated. Login scenario. Let's see how it generates the code. Here you see it has generated Python code because that is the internal instruction I gave. So it has declared two variables, username, password. It accepts directly from user. Now, if we are accepting it from the browser, we can change accordingly. If you are getting the data from the browser, we can modify the code to suit our needs. It lists the valid users. It says username is X, when user 1, password is password, etc. So it declares its own username, passwords, and then it starts writing the code to authenticate. We can fine tune the spec, scenario, so that we can get the better code. Now let me regenerate this code. I think now we're clear about this, how it generates the code, right? So anything you want to code, you give in simple English and it generates Python code. So now let's go back to the code and see what we are told here. So here we said generate Python code, convert the description into Python code. That's why it generates Python code. Now if you want Java code, let's just say here Java code. Then now we okay, we already started. Let's do that. Takes some time though.
A few moments later.
Okay, second time we started a little faster. Okay, now let's generate the code. So now it has generated the code in Java. So here it is, a complete function for user authentication. So it is taking the code from system in, which is from the console, and then, well, here it is, username and then password, and then it calls another function, authenticate user, which is created here to authenticate. Of course, it has used its own inbuilt assumed username password, but I think we can change it according to what is the source of the username password. Well, so what I'm trying to say here is it generates code. Now, how well it generates? Let's try to regenerate it. We'll see a different kind of a code. So we can try to generate a few times and see which is optimal for us to use, and then start modifying the code. Now, what I'm saying is here's a different kind of a code, but it's something very similar, but then it's not the same. Well, what I'm trying to say here is, will it replace the coder? I do not think so, because still it is not producing the best code that could be used, or it doesn't produce end-to-end usable code. So you need a developer who sees through the code and who just makes use of the code. It speeds up the work of a developer. We can say that, because where you need to type 10 lines, you may end up typing 2-3 lines. So to that extent, so where you have typed 100 lines, you may end up typing 30-40 lines, or you have to read through the code, modify the code, and type in 20% of the code, or whatever. So I'm just giving a rough figure of 20%. It may not be 20%. It may not be 20%. So what I'm trying to say here is ChatGPT, which helps us to generate code. Well, With that, let me end this session. But I think we have a lot more coming up. We'll make use of a lot of these techniques. See, not only that, like we are having many other models, not just ChatGPT's models. We have Llama Index, we have Llama, Code Llama, so many other advanced Code Llama from Meta that looks to be a little more advanced. So we have other things to discuss in upcoming sessions. So please keep looking for more from us. If you have not subscribed so far, please subscribe. Let's connect in some time. Thank you.